All right, today we're gabbing with Joan Summers, who is a senior editor at Paper Magazine. I've long admired her coverage of housewives and fashion and followed on social media. And so I'm glad that we're connecting today to talk about Summer House, Southern Charm, Beverly Hills. There's a lot going on in the Bravo world. Joan, thanks for being here. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I've also long admired your work, and there's
Thank
no one
you.
else I would want to talk about the destruction of Kyle and Amanda's marriage with than you.
Listen, it's one of those things where it's like on the one hand you feel a little bad where you're like, God, this season is so fucking good already because it's on the basis of a marriage imploding, but it just feels like also everybody's on the same page, including them. I think at this
Oh.
point in time that like it was the right thing to happen.
Yeah, no, I feel like I was telling this to a friend about this, where like with Scandoval, there was sort of the ickiness that came with like the Raquel of it all and the
Right.
James of it all. And it was like a train wreck you couldn't look away from, but you also felt like a little morally bad for paying attention at all. Whereas this, it's like no one really has been like morally or grossly harmed. It's just like a really toxic marriage, and we get to watch at the sidelines as it implodes. It feels much more like what I want out of Bravo, I
Yeah,
think.
100%. And also like we know now that they're on decent terms, like they seem
Yeah.
pretty cordial and like they both accepted the situation. So it's not one of those Bravo breakups where it's like in real time it feels really adversarial or like that we're gonna, you know what I mean? Like that also makes it go down a little easier.
Yeah,
Um,
no, like, listen, I have, and it like Skyfall. It's one of those things where it's like you almost don't want people who just tuned into Summer House like two
oh,
seasons ago to
I
comment
know.
on this because it's like we have been in the
You don't
trenches with
know.
these two for 11 years, you know?
I saw somebody else say that. I was like, because also that it's also interesting because people who are more in that realm of like
Yeah.
newer Summer House watchers, they're much more likely, it seems, just based on sort of anecdotal social media observation, is like they're more likely to be anti-Amanda in this whole thing because they see
Hmm.
her as like the nagging wife and always annoyed with Kyle and like why didn't she pull herself out earlier? That's sort of the sentiment that I'm seeing from the newer Bravo fan versus like the
Absolutely.
older Bravo fan knows that like Kyle's been acting a fool for quite some time, you
Yeah.
know? So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see that dichotomy.
There's an interesting, like, I think, like, if we're going to grossly
Yeah.
generalize, a
Yeah.
millennial Gen Z schism in Bravo
Mm,
watchers, where, like, I'll talk to people who are younger than me or, like, very much older than me, like my parents' age, who hate Lindsay, for instance, who, like, cannot stand Lindsay,
can't
like,
relate.
want her off TV, etc. But then I talk to women my age, and we're all like, fuck yeah, we fucking love
Hmm.
Lindsay, right? Like, even if she's a hot mess at times, it's like you can't look away. And I feel like that with Amanda, where she's kind of a litmus test on where you fall. Like, if you're taking Kyle's side, I think you really should, like, look at a few things about yourself. And I don't want to say, like, neither of them are blameless in this. I think
Of
Amanda
course.
has a lot to address about the way that she has handled her relationship on television for 10 years. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, coming away from this hating Amanda is such an
Yes, I think it does
interesting
say more about the
choice.
person than it does about what we're actually watching. All right,
Yeah.
so this episode of Summer House sort of picks up where we left off in the premiere, which was an excellent premiere, I would say, and just
Oh,
sets us
yeah.
up for such a good season. Amanda's just gone skinny dipping, and we actually kind of kick it off with this like, I mean, it's kind of the theme of the season. Amanda's gonna have these like things that she says where it's just like, oh my God, like like how are you guys still together? But she's like, he wants me to have more fun, but then he's not happy when I'm having fun, which is
Hmm.
kind of like a pretty great encapsulation of the dynamic from her perspective.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing with them is it's like this hypocrisy that happens in like a really toxic relationship where, one person says they want something and they get it and then it's not happy. It's like you can't do it right either way. And I think Kyle is really exemplifying that where like throughout the
Yeah.
episode it's like he wants it both ways, right? Like he wants a wife who pays attention to him, but then he's gone every weekend. And so it's like which is it? And Amanda's in sort of the same boat where she's like I want to have fun. He's mad at me when I have fun. I don't want him to work all the time, but I supported the business. It's like both of them, I think, are very much confused. But it's interesting to see Amanda in this position because it's been
I
the
know.
Kyle job forever, right?
A
Like
hundred
the
percent.
sort of dismissing him, being rude, sort of like publicly calling him out in front of everyone. She usually is protecting him while he's, going off, but it's interesting to see the roles reverse.
I know, and it's like, this is something we always want from Amanda because it's not always happening where she wants to be partying and having fun and
Yeah.
like being a little more outgoing than maybe is her like sort of natural way. And so for her to be in this space where it's like, clearly her and Sierra, I think without Paige have maybe it was a producer talking to them or whatever, but like they're clearly trying to like lean a little bit more into like being
Yeah.
social and stuff. And so for her to feel like Kyle's still checking her on that
It's
is
interesting
tough.
with you mentioned Paige. I feel like there's like a chain of hierarchy that happens socially in the house where like a lot of the girls used Paige as like a mouthpiece and then sort of like sat back as like Paige would go on the attack or like sort of like just say what was on everyone's minds. And with her out of the picture, I can imagine they're both like, oh, we don't really have much storyline or we don't have much to participate in if like Paige isn't here saying it for us. So I have to get in now, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's Sierra's very much like, okay, I guess I'm just going to say what's on my mind rather than telling Paige in bed and having her repeat it the next morning at breakfast.
1,000. Yeah, that is interesting. And I think that they're stepping up to the plate, but it's
Yeah.
definitely affecting the dynamic. And so after this party, they go out. And we're kind of back to this sort of hypocrisy thing where Kyle's sort of like venting to the guys and he's like, Amanda smokes weed every single night. And, my apartment smells like a frat house. It's so messy. She's like living chaotically and her mom has had to come clean at their apartment. Um, and then Amanda, like not knowing what they're talking about, comes over and she's like, I'm not here. I'm just eavesdropping, like in like kind of a cute, playful way.
Yeah.
And then KJ, I mean, I love like a newbie faux pas. And I'm loving KJ, but he goes, Kyle, man, we're here for you. Like as Amanda's there, even though Kyle's clearly like, don't tell her what we were talking
Yeah.
about. And so that busts it wide open.
Yeah.
And but he's like so cagey about wanting to tell her, but it's this hypocrisy of like, okay, wait. So you have been gone every single weekend, January through June, except for one weekend. You're out DJing and partying, but then we're having a problem with Amanda smoking weed
Yeah, it's
to wind
interesting
down.
with this particular conversation. It kind of blows like open the whole thing you said with the newbies, where we see this happen all the time, right? Where the newbies sort of step in it, and one
Right.
season it's Lindsay and Carl, the next season it's Lindsay and the next boyfriend, or Carl and whatever. It's interesting to see them come into this so unprepared to deal with what's going on between Paige and Kyle, or sorry, Amanda and
Amanda
Kyle,
and
where they're
Kyle.
like, guys, this is really bad. And we like literally keep making the wrong choice at every move. And I think too, with the smoking weed and the partying and all of it, one parallel I noticed, we mentioned Scandival, is the random piles of stuff. If you guys remember, like during Scandival, that was like another thing that Tom said about Ariana, where it's like she's depressed and she just leaves piles of stuff everywhere and
That's a
our
good
house is
parallel.
messy. And it's like, yeah, because she's depressed and she hates you. Like she's literally miserable and she's just doing whatever she wants now. Like that's what's happening here. It's very interesting to
Mm.
see him not recognize that.
That's such an interesting parallel. I had not thought about that, but
Yeah, men
it's
love to
very
do that,
similar.
right? When women stop playing mom, it's the worst thing in the world. I think it's funny. Lindsay later says, like, I've babied so many men in my life. I was born to be a mom. I think Amanda's sort of in the same boat where she's like, I babied this man. I like nursed him back to health every time. I like played house. I like arranged my whole life around him and his business and like wanting to have kids and like all this stuff. And like now I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to like go out with my
Mm.
friends and smoke weed and like not give a fuck. And he can't stand it. He literally cannot stand it.
Right. Wow. And it's also like, so I guess for her, maybe not even the particulars of what he said. It's like the fact that he is telling all these other people his frustrations and not her. But I did think it was one of the things that I am really liking about the way that they're kind of handling the Kyle and Amanda stuff this season already is they're letting them break the fourth wall in pretty subtle ways. Like, we talked about the page six story in the premiere and also the fan speculation and stuff like that. But in this one, it's this really interesting moment where they're out at a bar in the Hamptons
Yeah.
and Sierra and Amanda are like, or Amanda's like, I don't want people to see us fighting. And Sierra's like, yeah, people are recording. And that is not something they would have ever had to deal with as a cast, even like maybe even 4 years ago. Like maybe it just speaks to like the totally changing nature of this show and to like have to think about that as being a factor, like sitting on
Yeah.
our couches. It's fascinating.
There was a time when like the most sort of press this place got in page six was like the Hamptonites running to page six to be like,
Yes.
there's this party house in like season two, season three, and we don't want them
Like
filming at our
Montauk won't let them
businesses.
film
Yeah.
at Surf Lodge. Yeah.
Imagine Montauk not letting them film at Surf Lodge. Imagine that reality where they had to like drive like an hour to go anywhere because nobody wanted them to film. I really understand like underscores how much both Lindsay and Carl's relationship campaign in the press and also the like sort of post scandal of it all, and Paige's like explosive fame over the last two seasons has like
Hmm.
really changed like both who watches this show and how people interact with it.
Yeah.
Like the idea that at one point they would talk about people filming them is just like not something that was ever sort of allowed in the nature of this show or in the language of these castmates. It's very interesting to kind of think of them as like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, who are always talking about that, you know, always so aware of the press. It does say a lot, I think, about where
Yeah,
the
very
show's
much so. And it's like the mechanics of the show have always been interesting to me because it's like they do spend so much time at this one house. Like that's where the majority of stuff happens. And so that is a little bit of like a protective layer against things leaking and like kind of prying eyes, even though they do have these parties, but like they do, it's kind of, it feels pretty controlled in terms of like, all right,
Oh,
you're here at
yeah.
this time, you're leaving at this time. So they're protected from a lot of leaking and stuff, but like when they do go out, they're drunk and they're being open. And this is also, it's funny because they're partying with like kind of their ideal viewer too.
Yeah.
It's like the like young women who also go to the Hamptons and live in New York, and that's who they're kind of speaking to too.
It's interesting to think of that, right? Because, like, I
Yeah,
look at Kyle with the DJing career, and
yeah,
as like an observer, critic, writer, like around the Bravo sphere, you think like, who is going to Loverboy DJ sets, you know? But like, apparently, lots and lots of people like engage with these people earnestly, like see them as like aspirational, and like we want to be like sidled up next to them constantly. So yeah, I think there's a culture in the Hamptons now where it's like you're going to Surf Lodge almost to like see what's going down, which
right,
is a thing that happens on other shows, right? Like it's sort of Pump all over again, where it's like you go to
right,
Pump because you want to see VPR get filmed. It's just interesting to think that
totally.
that's where the Hamptons is at now, right? Like once
Yeah.
an enclave of the wealthy that was so shut out to the world, it's like, no, now it's just like a TikTok beach resort.
And people just want to send videos to Dumois
Yeah.
and get that sort of like instant gratification of it being
Yeah.
posted. All right, so let's jump to the Sierra, Lindsay, Amanda drink state in the city.
Um,
Finally, a scene with Lindsay. You know,
God.
it feels right having her around, of course. But we find out that Kyle and Lindsay had a talk. They were talking about something else on the phone, and he sort of unloaded onto Lindsay about Amanda. And he feels like he's alone in the relationship. And Amanda's like, well, there's a reason he feels alone in the relationship. And it's funny for Kyle to say, like, I feel alone in this relationship when like he is actively isolating himself because he's traveling to other places every weekend to DJ. And so it's this like, okay, what do you expect? Do you want her to like follow you around to all these DJ gigs around the country at Penn State and other college towns? Um, but then we got back into this idea of like constant rumors. She gets DMs all the time. And this is where it's really surprising to me because, you know, the revelation in the trailer that Kyle had fallen asleep at a fan's apartment and come home at 6:30 in the morning. I think a lot of people figured, okay, that's like a later in the season reveal. You know, that's gonna be a part of this like bigger thing. This is a second episode reveal
Second
from
episode.
Amanda. It's pretty wild that it came out so early. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like we were mentioning sort of like the blogs earlier and people recording. You know, Salt Lake City has this problem where like you'll be in the Reddit trenches and you'll see something and you're like, "Oh God, this is going to be on Salt Lake City next season, right?" Like whatever this is. That kind of has not really like played a huge factor in Summer House of late, but it's
Right.
interesting to see something that I saw like play out on like Reddit and Instagram in real time that was sort of like quickly moved past and dismissed, like become literally like the central defining plotline for Amanda this season. It seems like we're like this is going to be the jumping off point for her.
Hmm.
It was interesting to see that. It's also just interesting to see her and Lindsay make the same dynamic happen over and over again, where like, you know, Lindsay's secretly buddy buddies with Carl. Not like Carl, sorry, Kyle. Not secretly, but like her allegiance is with Kyle, right? Like she came into the house with Kyle. She's been friends with Kyle before the show. And at certain points, you know, Amanda confides in her and then Lindsay ends up burning her, you know, because she either tells Kyle
Mm.
what Amanda said or like sides with Kyle in an argument. And so I wonder if motherhood and the Carl relationship and, you know, Turner not working out will have changed Lindsay for the better, where she can like sort of, you know, keep it either neutral or like see where Amanda's coming from and not immediately tell Kyle. But them all being on the spinoff in the city tells me that like this dynamic isn't done with. And like, I don't think
Yeah.
things are going to stay peaceful between the three of these women for the rest of the
That
season.
that's a great observation. And I do think that's like sort of where Lindsay comes from. Amanda did say recently. It might have been even when I interviewed her very quickly at BravoCon, and she said that her and Lindsay have never been closer. So
That's great.
I think that your hunch that like maybe motherhood and just like even more maturity from Lindsay is
Yeah.
maybe pushing her to like maybe take a step back and like look at it. One, relate to the situation from her experience with Carl, but also like be. I think Lindsay is, you know, she comes from the PR world, but like I
Hmm.
think with a decade on the show, I think that she has way more self awareness of
Yeah.
what we're talking about in terms of optics and like where you land on like, you know, when there's a breakup, where are you landing? When there's a big issue, where are you landing? I think that she has a lot of more awareness about that than she did before the Carl breakup, for sure.
Yeah, I think like what happened with Carl, like if the Carl stuff hadn't happened, like this thing with Turner, we would see her still trying to like make it work and like,
Right.
fall over and try to like defend their relationship and keep it private and like do all the things that like we've come to know Lindsay to do in relationships with men. But like with Turner, it seems like she kind of just cut and run when it wasn't working for her. And she's like, nope, I'm done with this. Like, screw him. Not even maybe screw him, but like I'm moving on.
It's not
I'm not
worth
going to
it.
waste my time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I do hope because ultimately, like, I think when all of the women are getting along and the men are acting badly, I think the show just like glides along so much sooner because it's the women that are like the backbone of this show, like narratively, right? Like when they're all fighting, it just sort of grinds to a halt, which I think was a problem in sort of like season 9 and season 10, where it's like none of them got along. Lindsay versus everyone, newbies versus everyone, everyone's on the outs with each other. And it's like, what are we even watching? When they're all hanging out, it just gives it more momentum, I think. And this scene was super enjoyable. I
Yeah, it
like
was a
all their
great scene.
dynamic.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I think that I think I talked about this recently. Like the worst Summer House season in the past 6 years was the one where Lindsay and Danielle had their friendship fall out. And that
Yes.
was not an enjoyable central conflict. And it just, as you said, it ground everything to a halt. It was awkward for everybody. It was, and I think the Kyle and Amanda stuff is going to be awkward for people, but in a different way. And you're right that when the girls are aligned, like I love all of them. You know, I love all the women on this show. And so it's like, it's so much more fun for me to see Sierra and Lindsay as friends and like it's taken some time for them to get to this place, you know, like never forget that like Sierra and Danielle had like a huge conflict and Lindsay was on the Danielle side of that. So this was a great scene. And it's like 2 years ago, we would not have seen Sierra and Lindsay getting drinks together, you know?
No. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I also just love where Sierra is at on this
me
show.
too.
Like not only do I just love looking at her on my television cuz she is such a good dresser and so beautiful, but she also, like she says in the premiere, is so much more than that and we're really getting to see that side of her I think in the last 2 seasons, but this season she really seems like super solid and like who she wants to be both as herself and also like on this show in
Yeah,
these dynamics.
very much so. She feels very assured. And we'll loop back to that in a
Mhm.
second, but we have to talk about the other in the city scene, which is Kyle sit down at Carl's apartment. Um, Kyle's like, you know, I'm embarrassed about my behavior. You know, I'm ashamed that I was talking about our relationship to other people. I feel bad, but I'm under pressure with Loverboy. I've put $500,000 of my own money into this company to keep it running. And he's stopped paying himself a salary. That's part of why he started to DJ, which I buy that actually. I think
Yeah.
that's actually, I think there are other reasons why I started to DJ, but I think that loops back around nicely for me. Carl doesn't want Kyle and Amanda to go through what he and Lindsay went through. And that is where I think he was saying a lot without saying exactly it, which is like the public drag
Hmm.
through of it all. That was the subtext for me of what Carl was saying there. Like I was, you know, public enemy number one for a little bit there.
Yeah.
I don't want this to happen to Kyle because it's really difficult to get through that.
Yeah, and I don't think that Kyle would like Carl is ultimately sympathetic, right? Like
Very much
despite
so.
everything and
Yeah.
despite all of his choices and like what is it? Are we at Kyle 8.0 now? Like he is ultimately like a sympathetic figure. Like there's like a reason for the way that he was and what he became and like what he was struggling with after his sobriety and like with Kyle, he doesn't have that sympathy, right? Like he is a go-getter, he's ambitious, he like will stop at nothing to make his business successful and it's like his single drive in life. He has not been very nice to Amanda for the last 10 years on television. They started as sort of like a fling that he didn't care about.
Yeah.
He has all these seasons of disrespecting her. He doesn't have any of the goodwill that Carl has to like weather a mass public turning on him. And I'm not saying that he deserves it. I'm just saying, like, if the chips were to fall that way, I think Carl accurately recognizes that, like, my friend is a little bit less defensible, maybe. But there's
Yeah.
something else in this scene too. Carl mentions he was going to move to Charleston amid all of it, right? He was
Yes.
like, I'm done with all this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to move to Charleston. Did he think he was going to get on Southern Charm? Could we see Carl on Southern Charm? Or do we think that he was thinking, like, that's exile? He's like out of Bravo, just in Charleston for no reason.
You can't be thinking I'm moving out of Bravo and moving to Charleston. You can't. Like, I'm sorry. That is a small town city. That is essentially, I went there last year for the first time in a very long time. It was like Bravo Disneyland on
Yeah.
that main street with all those, with Republic and all that stuff. So it's like, I think you're maybe correct that
Yeah.
that's sort of like, all right, this isn't working for me anymore.
I was gonna say something. Maybe this is not generous, but it's like I'm gonna move to a show where the viewers are more sympathetic to men. You know, where like that
I
show's
mean, that's
established fan
accurate.
base actually likes men more than women. I mean, we'll get to
That's a
that
big but
on
that's a big
Southern Charm.
differentiator between the shows. You're right,
Yeah.
absolutely. The last thing that Kyle says here, he says that he does not think they're on the brink of collapse and he can't imagine his life without Amanda. She puts of their issues on him, but he doesn't want to correct her. I think it's interesting because I think that part of me, like one side of my brain, has been like, did they know they're getting divorced going into this season? Like, is that sort of they're sort of holding the decision until filming started or something like that? But I don't know. I think he believes this. I think he believes they weren't on the brink. I think maybe Amanda knew that this was their inevitable fate, and she was maybe letting it play out. I don't think Kyle knew. I
No,
believe he didn't believe they were on the brink of collapse.
we have seen these two be so calculated in the house and sort of like, I don't want to call them puppet masters because that's like overplaying what they do, but like they have been like the core people where they get their own
Yeah.
master, they're the married couple, they go and they sleep together off camera, like plan how they're going to talk about things. And we've seen what it looks like when they're being strategic, right? Like Amanda can barely keep it together. She's like not this like master manipulator
She's not
where
at
I think
all.
she can
No,
organize like, okay,
exactly.
you
It's
were
not her
so mean at
personality.
me. I'm going to get my season and you're going to humiliate yourself and we're going to like break up off camera and like just let it play out on camera. Kyle's way too prideful for that. So I think what we're just seeing is she knows it's done and she's just like letting it ride until she files for divorce. She probably doesn't want to do that in the house because I don't think a house like this could survive a divorce happening in the middle of it. Like,
While they're
yeah,
right.
no, she
Yeah.
knows better. I think she's just mentally checked out, even if the D word hasn't come into it. But Kyle is way too prideful to have filmed this season like this, talking the
Knowing
way that he is,
you're
if
right.
he knew he was getting divorced.
You're right. And my guest last week, Callie, she said she had a good point. She was like, it's at that stage of a breakup where like one of them knows it's happening, but they're talking about it to other people because they don't have like the courage yet or the bravery to like
Mhm.
have that conversation with each other. And it looks like that conversation's coming up next week or they're having one of those
Yeah.
conversations. But it does feel like that. It feels like she's been holding on to a lot of stuff and she's unloading onto him, but she hasn't really addressed things head on. I mean, we find out like between the two weekends, they don't talk about anything. And that's what leads to this end of the episode where they're having dinner and Kyle, raises his glass and he's like, I apologize to everybody for, making
Ugh.
our issues everybody else's issues. And then he's like, I'm not done. And then he starts, talking directly to Amanda. And I loved Sierra being like, I mean, it's the Euphoria reference. Is
Yeah.
this fucking speech about you? So good. It
No.
becomes a
Uh,
Sierra Kyle situation. And
mhm.
I got total flashbacks to last season when Paige and Kyle had that blow up over their outdoor dinner where
Yeah.
Paige stormed back into the house. And as it's sort of looping back to the earliest part of our conversation where it's like Sierra is sort of stepping into the Paige role of like
Mhm.
being an antagonist for Kyle, which is very natural. It's not like put on or anything, but she's letting herself lean into that, which is
Yeah.
fun to watch.
I will say, like, the thing that I think is so interesting about, like, sort of the way that Amanda's friends have to react to her relationship, I think historically, and if I'm going to give, like, a little bit of grace, like the
Yeah.
Giggly Squad in the beginning, if you look at, like, that COVID season conflict, A lot of it was like they're being told things about Kyle, they're seeing things about Kyle, and that's their friend, and they're like angry about it. They're like, you speak to her crazy, you speak to the rest of us crazy, you're
Hmm.
not a good boyfriend or a good husband. And like, then, Amanda gets put in the middle because, she probably complains to all of her friends about Kyle constantly. And then they're like, well, I have to defend you. But then she would get defended and then she would get upset because it's like, don't get in the middle of us. And so I think now, like, that she's totally checked out, it's way more refreshing because, like, Sierra does go on the attack here, but then Amanda joins in on the attack, which is like not a thing that she usually does. It's like usually she's like, "Oh God, I can't believe that like you're being mean to my boyfriend," or like, "Don't do that." Like I told you that in confidence. Like don't get in the middle. You're making it worse, etc. So I like that, and that's why I said like Paige isn't totally blameless. I think she definitely has used
Hmm.
Paige and Sierra specifically to like vent her frustrations, and as friends who care about her, they're like, we're not just gonna like sit here and let him be crazy or like act weird or disrespect you. And that's a hard
Yeah,
position to be in as a friend, where you like feel like
absolutely.
your friend's not standing up for themselves.
Especially on this show where it's like kind of part of being a successful cast member on Summer House involves somewhat accepting that Kyle is that number one guy and sort
Yeah.
of the head honcho of the group. And like there are ways to assert your power around that. And I think to surpass him, especially if you're sort of like appealing to the audience in a way, but
Mhm.
that is like a reality of the show. And I think that for Sierra to sort of now be able to like, because also part of the Giggly Squad bed bugs of it all has been like, okay, let him be king of this house. Like, whatever. We don't give a fuck. We'll be in bed talking shit. Like, who cares if he wants to be, the frat house president,
Exactly.
The last thing I want to say before we move on from Summer House is I really loved two things. One is Ciara brings a new friend, Mia, to the house, who seems,
Hmm.
I love her energy. I met her at the premiere party. She's fantastic. She feels like good on screen. She's one of those people you can just tell is like, you're going to like her. Did you get good vibes from her as
I
well?
like her. I gotta say, like, I really enjoy all of the new
Yeah,
cast.
me too.
KJ seems like a great addition. Bailey, and I will remember the other new girl's name eventually. She hasn't gotten much screen time, so I just haven't had like much time to stick. But
Levi.
Levi, yes, I love their energy
Me
together. I
too.
like them like looking at each other during dinners. It's like a very classic thing we see on this show. I think a lot of times new girls get thrust into the dynamic and don't have a partner in it.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
I think it was very successful for Paige to come on with a friend. Like, look where she's went on this show together with the friend and otherwise. So, yeah, I like all of them. And this new
Yeah.
girl, great vibes from her too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really refreshing new cast. And with this new
Yes.
cast of boys being a little bit more under their feet, I guess, like West and Jesse, like they brought a really good energy to the show. And so it's like
Yeah.
kind of a new era. I think
Yeah.
the
And it's
old
and it,
guard feels their way out, like is
yeah.
feeling like they're on their
And
way
that yeah,
out.
well, it's like there is a spinoff, and it's an important season to have this transition where you can set people up for success
Yeah.
when Kyle, when Amanda, when Lindsay and Carl aren't there. And speaking of KJ, the last thing I just loved the conversation between him and Sierra while they're
Yeah.
waiting for dinner on that second weekend. It just felt like, I mean, a couple things. It's like it's hard to get Sierra to open up like that, and for him to be able to do
Hmm.
that, like after 1 week of knowing her, is really, I think, speaks to his like how he's been able to make inroads with the cast already and connect with people. And it's also hard, I think, for men to work on this show. We had so many one season wonders on Summer House when it comes to, I mean, guys and girls, but like I think of Imrul from last summer, who was just like so unable to connect with anybody, and like there was this sort of contingent of the viewership online that was like, give him a chance, like bring him back again. I'm like, I'm sorry, like he seems like a nice guy, but he made no efforts to actually get to know people. And then we
No.
compare that to KJ, who after 2 episodes is connecting with Sierra on such an emotional level that she's crying and they're sharing their stories with each other.
Yeah.
I thought it was a beautiful scene and just spoke to his abilities and promise like as a person on this show.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in my column, which it was very cute. He like posted an excerpt from it on his Instagram grid after
Aw,
the premiere, which I was like, oh, that's like very cute thing for new Bravo people to do. Like, look at
totally.
the
I love
press that I
that.
got. And anyways, in that, one of the things I said was like, I was kind of making a crack, we have anxiety now, which is like, I think a lot of the men on this show have their own struggles with mental health. And it's like, now we have anxiety in the mix, which I think is interesting. And while I was using it as like a little bit of a wisecrack, tongue in cheek, like I do actually mean that, like, on this show, I think for a long time you had very repressed men like
Yeah.
Carl and Kyle, where they kept everything inside and then would explode. And it's refreshing to see people like Jesse and West and now KJ come in and show that like men and this like especially our age or younger are changing. Like the way they relate to each other is changing, the language they use is changing, like their identities or like their ideas about themselves are changing. And like I couldn't imagine in 2011 a person like KJ coming on or even a person like West coming on and like talking like about anxiety attacks and being like, did I do the right thing for you in the moment? Is that what you needed? Like, is there anything else I can do? Like, it just felt very refreshing. It felt very modern and sort of like what this show felt like in the beginning, which was like a new kind of thing we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, that's so well said. And it's like, it's also, it speaks to it that it didn't feel cheesy
Yeah.
or put on or like made you want to roll your eyes. Like it felt genuine and it fits,
Yeah.
which is important too, because that is something that I wouldn't always react well to seeing if it didn't feel
Yeah, well,
authentic.
like imagine Kyle trying to have that
Right.
conversation, like I would roll my eyes. I'd be like, "Oh, brother, now he's going to talk about how he's depressed," which like not to diminish, men's struggles with mental health, but like, it also
Yeah.
comes from who's saying it, and I think KJ is just a really refreshing addition. And so is this
Yeah.
new girl. I'm interested to see what her dynamic with the other girls are
Me
going to
too.
be.
Me too. Me too. Wow. Well, lots of new people. I'm so like happy. I'm like happier that the season of Summer House is on,
Ugh.
you know?
I watch it and I smile. Like I
Yeah, me
truly am
too. I'm like,
smiling,
this is
which
so fucking good.
yeah, on Bravo, I'm not smiling a whole lot right now. It's like
Mm-mm.
this and VPR for me are the reasons to get out of bed every week.
Mm. All right, let's move over to Southern Charm, the city that Carl is maybe potentially going to move to. Um, I mean, so we're at Witt's farm,
Mm-hmm.
and I love a little like day or a trip that's like a day or two. I
Yeah.
love one of those on one of these shows, because it breaks up the monotony of being in the city, but it's not their big trip. Austin broke up with Audrey before this trip, and it's been trickling out in this kind of like way that as a viewer, like you just kind of feel uncomfortable because you know that like it's gonna come to a head where like it's gonna be discussed in the presence of somebody that has not been told yet, or like the person's gonna Austin's gonna feel pressure to tell XYZ
Yeah.
person. Um, so it's uncomfortable. He finally tells Shep at the end of this episode, and he takes it well, and I guess he hasn't told Craig yet directly, but Craig knows.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just glad that Austin finally broke up with Audrey and sort of put her out of her misery because like it lasted a little too long
Yeah.
or a lot too
It's
long.
it's interesting, like, one of the things that makes the show compelling and also a dismal experience at times is Craig's like profound lack of self-awareness. Like his reaction to that relationship and like the whole you're dragging her along, you're like stringing her on, like yada yada yada. It's like, yeah, but look at all the women in your life you have literally done that to. Or also, like, look at the way you're treating the women in your life currently, like with this whole Sally thing. Like, it is like, dude, literally look in the mirror for 5 seconds. It's so infuriating. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those unfortunate times where Craig was right, but like for all of the wrong reasons. And seeing Shep be the mediator in this like dynamic with the
Always
whole
has to make you
Audrey of it
laugh.
all is so just like, okay, okay,
Hmm.
Shep, whatever you say, sure.
Yeah, it's with Craig and Austin. They just like they're at this point in their relationship where they just can't admit they have anything in common. Like
Hmm.
they have such like disdain for each other right now that any similarities that are pointed out, they're like, no, I'm not that way. Like she sucks. Like, it's they have this like visceral reaction to each other right
Yeah.
now. And it's so, ooh, I mean,
Yeah, it's interesting too because there is so many things that like Craig could have. Like, you're mad at me because my business is successful and yours is failing. Like, there's so many things like that in their dynamic where it's like, yeah, it's interesting to watch it play out. But as a viewer, season to season now, it's just sort of like, let one of them go. Just cut one of them loose, and this show will be so much smoother sailing. Like, I don't enjoy watching men like gossip and fight with each other. It's not enjoyable to me because they're not good at it either.
it's so funny because it's like I go so back and forth with Southern Charm because I have the same frustrations as you,
Yeah.
but also then there are some weeks where I'm just like, I think I just have to accept what this show is.
Yeah.
Like it's not it never really has been for the girls. I guess maybe you could argue that like in the Cam
Yeah.
era, it was like more that way. But at this point, it just feels like this is their. It just feels like they're their show. This is their show, and everybody else is sort of a supporting character. And
Yeah.
like,
Here's the thing. I'm going to say something that might anger a
say
lot
it.
of people, and I'm fine with it. Like, listen, if she has done something hideous in the meantime, like, I am not just standing by it. I'm talking purely from what I know watching this TV show, which is like Naomi, and the best that Southern Charm ever was like Naomi's season where it was like the girls club in reaction
Hmm.
to the boys club, where they're like, we're not
Hmm.
going to put up with the boys club anymore.
Good
And,
season.
her maybe not cheating on Craig, cutting and running with that other guy and like leaving the show was like the best choice anyone on this show has ever made, because she accurately assessed that like she was never going to be the hero. She
Hmm.
was never going to get a fair shake. It was ultimately always going to be about Craig, Shep, and now Austin. And like none of the women on this show ever leave unscathed or are the heroes or get to be. And I think you also see Madison recognize that too, where like the reason why she plays so neutral with the guys is because like that's the path to being successful on this show.
Very
I
much
think
so.
she came in very hot in the beginning, justifiably, and was correct in all of her estimations of everybody. But like viewers hated her. The guys on the show railed against her and said the most horrible things about her.
Hmm.
And so she's like stepped back and she's like, yeah, boys, whatever. You're just the boys. I'm going to film with Patricia every week and like, make like throwaway comments about my pregnancy. And like, that's her role now, because she realizes it can't be more than that. Like she can stir the pot passively, but she can't get in it, because getting in it turns you into a Sally or a Vanita, where like no matter what you do, you're always going to be in the wrong,
Hmm.
especially, I mean, can we talk about Vanita really quick? Like,
Yes, yes. The Vanita and Sally thing, it came to a head again this episode, I guess,
Mhm.
because it had been sort of set up where like Molly and Sally had their come to Jesus, where they're like, wait, Vanita was sort of the instigator in terms of this comment about Molly's procedure that she had done, and also like Vanita had apologized to Molly for that, but she had not kind of accurately represented how she said that to Sally. Um, and so it becomes this moment where they're at the lake or the pool or where the fuck on which property they were. Um, where do you land with this?
I think that like I have like staunchly defended Vanita for a few seasons, because like
Hmm.
she got such an unfair shake, both like in how she was brought onto the show, the sort of topics this show forced her to address
Hmm.
head on and sort of like be the avatar of and stand for, and like the way that the show works with just women, but also women of color, black women specifically, which was
Yeah.
like a very difficult position for her to be in. Then the last few seasons have happened, and it's been sort of like, okay, I actually can't explain why you're acting like this or your choices, because with the whole Sally of it all, it's like, yeah, you're technically right, but like, you're just letting yourself get humiliated over and over again. Like, at what point, like, what's the game here, right? Like, with men or with your friends or with any of it, I'm just like, I can't understand what her choices are and like where she's coming from. Like, yeah, Craig will walk her like a dog, but like, you're lusting after a guy who had a girlfriend the whole time. And then when you found out, you kept lusting after him. So like, I don't know, like, what
Mm.
exactly do you want? And the sort of lack of self-awareness is just really tough. That said, Sally's acting like a serial killer. Can we just say it? Like, her energy
She's
is
on one. It's
intense.
sinister. Yeah, it's definitely sinister. And like, yeah, the Vanita thing is really difficult because I'm just like, she also, I think that Sally is right that she's not really taking accountability. Like she has
No.
apologized to Molly, which is twice now, which is she's apologized to Molly. But like, I am also kind of sick of Vanita walking away from
Yeah.
conflict when she gets called out. Like she gets tearful and emotional, and but it's like you have said these things, you have repeated these things, you have acted this way. So like I just want her to stand 10 toes down and sit there
Yes.
and defend herself and like throw it back at Sally, like
Yeah.
there's plenty to criticize Sally about, but
So much.
I
Like,
the constant walking away is, I mean, she left
yeah.
the sleepover, she left this, I think there's another one. Oh, it's really frustrating because you want to root for her, but you can't really in this moment.
No, and then like when like she's sort of cornered about her choices or like cornered about what she does, like at reunions she does this. Like if she's not walking away, she sort of does the like coy, secretive,
Yeah.
like, did I do that? Like, oh, I don't, oh gosh, oh, I don't want to say like sweet,
Mhm.
cutesy thing that like also kind of drives me up a wall. Like, especially with the whole, I completely forgot that man's name. I'm so sorry. The one who's now what, moved to
JT.
Thailand? Yeah, JT moved to Thailand, sold all of his belongings.
Eek.
Like, yeah, me also after being on Southern Charm, I guess too. But like, like with that, it's like, even when she was called out for it, she kind of did the same routine of
Yeah.
like walking away. And then when finally cornered, was like, oh, you don't know. Yeah, I did call him and we did see each other. And it's like, just stand by what you did. Like, you
I
did it.
know.
It's fine. Look, Shep has been the most horrible person, made the most horrible choices. And like, this show has moved on from it. These people that are his friends have moved on from it. Like, they will move on from whatever it is that you've done. Like, you don't have to like run away from conflict. That's what I mean. It like just grinds the whole thing to a halt in a way that makes it a slog a little
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely. And it's like, and again, like her two sort of adversaries here, Craig and Sally, they're people that you can, there are things that are like sort of right there for her, for Vanita to
Yeah.
use against them, but she can't bring herself to go there.
Yeah.
Um, so the Sally of it all, I mean, Molly was right that the body isn't even cold, and Sally's like on Austin's lap essentially. Like it is
Yeah.
just like a dog. Like she is feral for Austin. And I think that also Charlie's right that like let her do that because
Let
like
her
then
do
it takes her off of Craig and Charlie.
Yeah.
Um, it's actually a
It's
pretty compelling
enjoyable to
compelling
watch.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like kind of like this cat and mouse like maze.
I am watching through my fingers though, because like, I mean, listen, like, I guess maybe like let's address like I guess maybe I have internalized misogyny where like Craig does the same thing to women, Shep and Austin do the same thing to women, and then when it's like a woman doing the same kind of thing, it's like, oh God, I don't want to see that. But I guess it's maybe like watching her, it's like she says this thing about his dad bod, right? Austin's dad bod. And she's like,
Yes.
that's the kind of guy that I like. And it's like, but you were just telling us how Craig was the perfect guy. And I think for her, she just convinces herself that every object of her affection
Yes.
is like exactly what she wants. And like how actually,
And we've
like,
all been there, right? You
yeah,
know?
we've all been there, but it is like, girl, let's
Yeah.
heal, like let's heal, let's address this. Cause like you went from a guy who has chat GPT psychosis to a guy who's like running a failing beer company, like,
Yeah, and what really again the subtext here is that she wants to cement her spot on the show.
yes.
And so there's these two guys because Shep, she's not going to go for Shep, right? Like that's off the table, I guess, for her. So Craig scorned her, and now she's on to Austin. And
Yeah.
I guess in some ways I admire the like chutzpah and the
Mhm.
drive, but also part of me is I'm just like, girl, Sally girl.
Charlie too. I think one thing I was noticing is like I think with her and Wit, who are the newcomers this season, I don't trust either of them. I don't trust like what they say, and I don't trust their intentions. Only because I
Explain.
know what this show is, right? Like this show is very much like Southern Charm. Sorry, Summer House, where it's like you come on and you have to go through the gauntlet of Craig, Shep, and Austin, either sleeping with one of them, having slept with one of them, or dating one of them to like be on this show.
Hmm.
And so with, Sally, it's so obvious that that's what she's doing, but Charlie's presenting it a little less obvious. But like watching her in scenes with Craig, I'm like, you might as well be a mannequin in this scene, right? Where she doesn't really say anything. She doesn't really affirm anything that she's saying. And when she hears that he's talking about her, if you watch her body language in that scene, she's sort of like, so I heard this. And then he justifies it. And she's like, okay. And it's this game I think she's playing with him where it's like, give him just enough that, he becomes interested and he like is like, I have to chase her. Stay disinterested enough that he continues to chase, but have the ulterior motive that you're doing this to be on the show. Like, I just find her game much more obvious, or like, I mean, more subtle, but like I see it so obviously that it's like hard. With
But
Wit, I don't believe anything about his breakup. That's the other thing. That's where I
oh,
don't trust him at all.
what's
He has
totally his
clues
side
in
of
this.
it?
Yeah, he has
Hmm.
clues in this episode about what really happened in that relationship, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
What are the clues? Tell me the
Well,
clues.
he's talking about his anger a lot this season. And then when he talked about it originally, he's like, she just up and left me and there was nothing I did wrong.
Hmm.
She said all these things I did wrong, etc. And
Hmm.
then over the last couple episodes, he's been like, I have this deep, simmering, burning rage inside of me that like, yada yada, but I keep it under the surface, I don't like let it out or whatever. And his family dynamic and their whole like sort of like genteel, like smiling Southern hospitality. Like, I guess maybe I'm so suspicious. I'm like, I don't trust any of it. I don't trust what you think happened in your breakup. I don't trust your family. I don't like the vibe at this farm. Like, get me out of here, truly. Like, get me out before someone kills me. That's my vibe this
And then
episode.
he also like inserted himself into the Sally Vanita
Yeah.
hash out in a kind of random, weird
Very
way.
random. Yeah.
But then also, what sort of one of my like Roman empires for this season has been Sally on Watch Happens Live because Andy was like, wait, why is nobody sort of interested in Whitner? Like, he seems like a great guy, like, has a good job, has his life together. And Sally said something along the lines of like, well, we haven't, nobody has seen the real Whitner yet, or something
See,
like
that's what I'm
that.
saying. Like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Where like,
but like it's like as a viewership, you're picking up on clues, but I think generally speaking, if you're
yeah,
watching this season, like you're not really seeing much of that or adding it all up. And so
no.
it's like, what was Sally talking about? And maybe this is what she's talking about.
Yeah, and we've also seen him get like again because he doesn't have a driving storyline this season like the others. He's sort of being like background charactered a lot. Like,
Hmm.
um, there's scenes where if you're watching him, he's like blackout drunk in like a lot of the scenes by the end of it.
Uh,
Like he's very drunk and like very wasted. And so I'm like, oh, you're like operating on the level that like Craig and Shep operate on when they party, but we're just like not seeing the
because you're
effects
not the
of that or
focus.
like what that looks like in practice when you're interacting with other people, women, men, whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like with him, it's like I totally buy what you're saying about there being a sinister thing. I do think he fits in well with
Oh
those
yeah.
boys. And the other thing is that like part of me, just because like I love Molly, like I just like love her
Oh
vibe
yeah.
and like she's funny genuinely and like she seems like a normal person and just like but there's not much for her to do on this show. And I just like
No.
I need her to somehow get a foothold in because I don't want her to be taken away from us too soon. So
Yeah.
part of me was like, oh, just like hook up with Whitner, you know. But also I don't want that for her, you know.
Yeah, her dynamic with Whitney makes me not Whitney. Yeah, Whitney makes me sad a little bit like
I hate
watching that.
that.
Yeah, like true I was like as
Ugh,
a longtime viewer of the show and sort of like, you know, what Whitney represents to a lot of the women on this cast, it makes me feel like ooh, but I do
I
love her as a person. Like
me
as a
too.
character, she's so interesting and she's sort of this like millennial cringe character where she's like a horny nymphomaniac, not a horny nymphomaniac, a horny kleptomaniac. There we go, right? Like she's like always horny and also a hoarder. I find that so funny in context, and she plays this insane instrument and like sort of stands in the background of scenes being like, what's going on here? Did I do that? And I like love it. I love it in
Me
practice.
too.
Like I'm just obsessed with watching her. I wish she had a better role, like you
I mean,
said.
maybe they could just have her lean into being like the Kathy Hilton,
Yeah.
you know, like point of humor for the show. Like they could maybe do that. Because I really think that she's a great presence on the
Yeah.
show.
She reminds me of like a Kristen Wiig character in a lot
Sure.
of
Yeah, yeah,
ways.
yeah, yeah. So speaking of Beverly Hills, speaking of millennial cringe, let's go over to the ladies of Los Angeles. I mean, honestly, the double birthday dinner, I thought was fantastic. I
Oh yeah.
thought like people have been ragging on the season of Beverly Hills as being boring and uninspired. I thought this dinner was amazing. I thought it was
Yeah.
really good TV. There's a lot going on. A lot of them got involved.
Yeah.
I watched that episode and I was like, all right, I'm down for this.
I think that Rachel Zoe, like I was writing when she was coming back onto
Hmm.
TV, where I was kind of I did this like longer piece on her where it's like if you look at what she represented back in the day, like she was so calculated and controlling on the Rachel Zoe project, and that is like something that makes people like not very successful on Beverly Hills, and also is like what is not successful about Beverly
Hmm.
Hills right now. And so I was really sort of wondering like is she going to kind of maintain that like arm's length distance from the show? I don't want people like back on the Rachel Zoe project. I don't want people to know about what's being said about me in the press or like all the rumors and like stuff like that, or like what my clients may or may not be doing. She really is just like in it this season in a
Hmm.
way where I'm like, oh, it's very refreshing. Like she's bringing this like sort of divining rod presence to the cast where, you know, what's her name? Amanda says something and she's like, why would she say that? That brings literally nothing to the conversation. Or like at a dinner, everyone's kind of doing it. And she's like, this is literally stupid. Like this is a meaningless argument, you know, like I'm mad because my public divorce leaked in the press in a thing I did publicly and now everyone's talking about it. Like that sort of thing too. Like how just so random and like inconsequential a lot of her drama is. It's just refreshing, especially on a show bogged down so much by like the press and the Kyle versus Dorit of it all and like what we're not saying about Erica. I find her presence refreshing in a way maybe Amanda's also refreshing, which is a controversial opinion amongst fans, but like she's bringing a lot of energy to this cast. You know, like she's in here shaking it up in a way no one has been able to shake it up in a while.
100%. Rachel, completely agree on that. I think that she has nothing to lose when it comes to her divorce, and that she's opening up about all of it, which is such a it's in stark contrast to Kyle and what we've got from her for the past 3 years. So that sort of in and of itself, and then also she does have this air of being like I don't think she feels above it, but she
Mm-mm.
just I think it like inherently has some of that because
They
of who
all
she
think
is.
she's above it. That's
Yes,
the thing, I think.
totally.
They like
They've lifted her up.
a lot of people have pointed this out where like the hierarchy has traditionally been like Kyle at the top, Kathy slightly above her, and then everything trickles down from that. And
Mhm.
now there's someone finally who's like above that, right? And I think that that was why they went on the attack with Denise, because I think they thought Denise was going to occupy that slot of
Her
like
personality is not
someone
that
who's
way.
actually famous, but she couldn't fulfill that role. Like this, I think, is perfect because it's like finally a new hierarchy.
Hmm.
Things have like really swapped places. You know, it's no longer Sutton's the kicking bag and Kyle's up at top, and everyone has to negotiate those two extremes. Like, here comes Rachel. Everyone thinks she's way more famous and popular than them, and she's really controlling the dynamic in a way I enjoy.
But then Amanda is below
Oh,
Sutton,
yes,
and
yes,
that's also
yes.
important. And I mean, Amanda, I agree that like she's been so good for the show. Like they needed somebody like this. I wish that it was somebody for me personally that like I liked more. Like I don't
Yes.
really like her.
Mm-mm.
Like I find her to be like so painful and cringe, but like in a way that like I understand their reaction to her. But then because it is everybody against her, then it becomes like, oh wait, do you sympathize a little bit with her because she's the one-off person?
They never learn. They
Never.
literally never learn. The like universal gang up does not work. Like, how many seasons have we watched it play out where it's everybody against one
Yeah.
person and they emerge the hero? Like, how many times have we seen that? I think Amanda's so unlikable that that won't happen here
Right.
necessarily.
I agree.
But like, it is just in practice, like if we didn't know anything about like her business or what she says in the press or like how weirdly controlling she is like to the tabloids or to the media interviewing her, it's like if that was all taken away, she could have walked out of this sympathetic because it's like a playbook we see happen all
Yeah.
the time.
I will say I'm happy to hear there was like these rumors that she had like dropped out of filming or something like that. And she was like, that's bullshit. No, like I'm in. So I'm happy to hear that because I'm happy she's there. Like that, like across the board, I'm like, you know what? Like you are really riling the girls up
Yeah.
and you are out here, saying that Dorit verbally accosted you and you're defining the word in real time off your phone. And she's like, it's this classic thing also where this new person comes in and she's like, why do we have to like solve conflict this way? Like, why do we have like, I'm so not used to like being at a dinner party where like I leave in tears and like we argue like this. And it's like, girl, like, do you know what show you're on? But like, she has this like lack of
Yeah.
something that prevents her from accepting or
Um,
she thinks that she can change it, like genuinely speaking.
I
Um,
I think we've sort of seen this, like, you know, the avatar of the girl boss kind of like
yeah.
coalesce over the last 10 years on Housewives, where you get these women that are like, they come in with like the agenda of like promoting a business, like all this therapy speak, like they're younger, so they don't want to like sort of get in the muck with like the older ladies, etc. And I think that she's really like the death knell of that on these shows where it's
Hmm.
like we're really seeing in real time that like both audiences don't want to watch that and also like it doesn't hold up when you put her against somebody like Dorit who is vicious, right? Like she is vicious and she's going to
Especially
cut through
now.
the therapy speak and she's going to be like, you're a fucking bitch and I hate you. And that's not what Dorit said, but she might as well have, you know? And it's interesting to watch sort of the toughness of that language, right? Like the boundaries and the like,
Hmm.
you know, you're overstepping my boundaries, all that Amanda does. It's interesting to just watch it completely fall apart
Very
in
much
real
so.
time
Well,
and not like stand up.
Lewis Staples, who's a writer who's written about Housewives a lot, he tweeted that like she's kind of exemplary of this like millennial problem sort of that
Hmm.
Housewives has. It's like this sort of older millennial who speaks in that way. It's the
Yeah.
girl boss thing. And even the way that you were just talking about how she comes across is kind of exactly what I was talking about with the KJ and West thing, where it's like they're
Yes.
talking about anxiety and all this stuff, and it feels like very natural and real. And the way that she talks about all this boundaries and just like woo woo ideas, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking
She's an
about? Like,
Instagram infographic come to life where it's like
yes.
infographics about
And she
infographics
posts a
about
lot of
Instagrams.
infographics.
Yeah, she posts a lot. And that's the thing. It's like if you trained an AI model exclusively on Instagram infographics and then put it into a human body, like that's what she reads like. Where she's talking and you're like, what you are saying is like not connected to reality. Like it's not connected to reality. Like you literally are on a TV show. You literally talked about Dorit's divorce. You said a thing about Dorit's divorce that Dorit took issue with. She confronted you about it. And now it's like, why would you ever say anything to me about that? That's so weird. It's so weird and not like you. It's
And
like,
also now it's not her opinion, it's Kyle's opinion that she repeated. You
oh
know, that's
God.
also what it is. So then it becomes this thing. The Dorit and Amanda thing becomes a Dorit and Kyle thing. First of all,
Mm.
the Dorit bringing up the cult thing was a total misdirect, like a total like it came out of nowhere, kind of like Meredith on the Salt Lake City reunion, like totally like left field. But Kyle Kyle's basically upset with Dorit about airing PK out and how that's going to affect their children. But I think the subtext there is that she's doing it publicly. It's not that she's
Yeah.
doing it; it's that she's doing it on camera and in the press and all this stuff. And Dorit obviously is like, wait, but like you should be in my corner, creating the safe space for me to open up and to vent because that's what girlfriends do. Um, because Dorit is also opening up in a way that Kyle has never done about Mauricio since
Mm-hmm.
they split.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kyle thinks that it's her way is the best way because they've been able to maintain whatever relationship they have. Um, do you think that Kyle is looking out for Dorit? Is it still weirdly defensive of PK? Like, where are you falling when it comes to their, because that's their central conflict.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm gonna actually introduce a third thing, which is
Okay.
that Kyle is reacting to nothing. Like Kyle is reacting to a way that she was taught to behave that she like
Mm,
still has not addressed, which is like centering and prioritizing men. I mean, like so much of Beverly Hills has been the effect that Big Kathy had on the Richard
totally.
sisters. And in all of those relationships, but more so in Kyle, so much about her run on Beverly Hills has been her failure to see men as like villains, as aggressors, as people who are at the source of conflict, as, people who are to blame for things. Like, I think of Taylor constantly, where like her first instinct when Taylor was talking about the abuse that she was suffering from Russell was to say, like, well, I can't imagine that from Russell because he seems like such a nice guy. And she doubled down on
Mm,
that for most of the season. I think about like with PK now or even Mauricio, where it's like, well, no, Mauricio can't be a bad guy because he's like a great father. PK can't be a great guy. I think he's a great dad. I think like this is just how she sees the world. And like if she was to interrogate it, there's so many things in her life that would probably start to fall apart. I really don't think she has addressed what really happened in her marriage. Whatever it was, whether it was cheating, infidelity, like growing separate of each other, whatever it is, we really are never going to know. She hasn't really addressed it. And I think on the after show, what's interesting, which I'm assuming you're watching,
yeah.
she talked about how she spent Christmas with him in Aspen and his behavior, like I think was a wake up call for her where she was like, oh, I am like defending somebody who does not feel the same about me and like I have to move on. And so I think maybe she's getting there, but like at the time this season is airing, and even when they filmed the first part of the after show last October, like she hadn't gotten there yet. And in this moment, she's just like reacting to something where it's like, I don't think she has any loyalty to PK. She just has like loyalty to the concept of men generally.
Interesting. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think the after show moment you're alluding to is really telling. I remember her talking about that, and it's just fascinating that it's taken her this long to get to
This
that
long.
point.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like all of us as viewers could have told her that like that first summer that they were single and he was gallivanting around Mykonos, being making out with people at the airport or whatever it was. Um, so I'm happy she's gotten to that place,
Yeah.
but it's just fascinating that it's, I mean, and you know, I guess to give her a little grace is that like she's been in this like institution of a marriage and this like
Yeah,
picture perfect family. So
absolutely.
like obviously it takes a minute to like actually see outside of
Deprogram.
that.
Yeah.
But it's been years at this
It's
point,
been
and so
years.
and he's been acting a fool in the press for quite some time.
Yeah.
Um, I do. There are elements of her and Dorit's back and forth that just, I mean, the part of their argument at that dinner where it was like, remember, and the editors like added some like reverb on it, and then it was like
Mhm.
slow motion, and then Dorit repeats it back to her, and then there was the other part where Kyle was like, you got to stop talking, like you got to get to the point, or whatever it was, and then Dorit, like while Kyle's talking, Dorit just goes like saying that her mouth is not opening. I mean, it's so childish, but so good, so
So
good. They
childish.
have their moments.
Yeah, I want to just before we move on, I want to say I really want Kyle, Dorit, and also let's bring in Lisa Vanderpump here to interrogate their like frequent and repeat intense conflicts with women they once described as best friends and sisters. I just like, especially Kyle, like let's unpack that. Let's like do
Sure.
some reading of tweets that lesbians occasionally do about their coming out, or just people who like girls, or even just people who don't like men necessarily. Like let's all just like examine our relationships to the women in our lives and the intensity of these feelings that we seem to have nowhere to put. So that's the last thing I want to say for all of
Okay.
them.
Okay. And then the last thing that I want to mention before we end is Rachel Zoe has
Hmm.
this, and I guess I always have to say Rachel Zoe. I don't really
It's
say
Rachel
Rachel.
Zoe. Like
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
Rachel Zoe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel Zoe has this really like emotional reaction. She kind of realizes that like what Kyle's sort of asking Dorit to do, she can't imagine somebody doing that to her because she has like benefited so much from having the space to open up about her divorce and to unload. And um, I found it to be really interesting, both like coming from her because we've seen her talk about her divorce sort of in her solo scenes and some in the
Mhm.
group, but like this was like sort of next level in terms of, again, as we sort of started this conversation of like her willingness to like be a
Go there.
housewife and go
Yeah.
there. Yeah. But also it's like, I kind of was curious about Rachel if she was ever going to sort of take a stand in one way or the other. And in this way, I think she's really formally sort of aligning herself with Dorit, despite she's about to go to the Hamptons with Kyle and Dorit, but it's sort of this. She's sort of also putting a stake in the ground in terms of no, I'm sort of on the Dorit side of the aisle when it comes to this
Yeah.
issue. You know?
And this sets up like I hate that we watch so much Housewives and we're always like strategizing like it's
I
football, but
know, I
it
know.
sets up an
Bravo's my
interesting
sports.
dynamic down the down the way where we know that Rachel's like takeaway bestie from this season is Erica, that she's closest to Erica. They like are in the after show together. They're like a great dynamic. Erica, we see, has a falling out with Dorit
Hmm.
aligned with Kyle. And so
Hmm.
I'm interested to see if it becomes like
Yeah,
Rachel in the middle of Erica and Dorit in future seasons or at the reunion or later on. Like I'm interested to see where Rachel goes from here because she clearly gets along with Erica, but she's on Dorit's side about this. I like that we have those kinds of things like
me too.
simmering under the surface. It feels like the show has a lot more to go, like a lot more places to go this season and the dynamics. Like we haven't really seen their fully formed relationships yet, you know? I'm interested to see also where Bose comes into play because we
Yeah,
haven't really talked much about her, but I don't know. I find her to be kind of passive this season. Like she's sort of the Greek chorus role this year in a way that's like, I guess it's working for her, but it's not like memorable for me. Like I couldn't remember really where she came at this episode with besides
yeah.
her IVF journey.
Yeah, no, I agree about the Rachel Zoe part. I think that it's so much more interesting when it's less defined teams, quote
Yeah.
unquote, and more kind of interconnected dynamics. And with Bose, I agree. It's like both her and Rachel are sort of serving that same role when it comes to their confessionals of like being that Greek chorus, being the voice of the people. But it's much more memorable to me when Rachel Zoe does it. Like I remember her moments a little more. I thought I did like Bo sort of gathering up Amanda and being like, "What do you think this is? Like, that's not the human experience of like being able to control how
Yeah, I
conflict gets
loved
resolved."
that. That was
That was
the most memorable
that
takeaway.
yeah that's been her best moment of the season so far for me. But I agree. I think with Bo's almost maybe in the way that I expected from Rachel, she feels a little bit more um like watching it all happen versus like in it.
We don't really like I was thinking about this the other day, but like it's interesting the way that Bose comments on things because like
Hmm.
listen, I think Erica they forced her hand with a lot of the stuff about her personal life. Like the press forced her hand and she had to
Very
divulge a
much
lot.
so. Yeah.
I think that Dorit was in a similar position where she was very controlled until she couldn't be anymore. And then, like, her hand got forced. But I think with like Sutton has been so open about like some really humiliating things that have happened to her and like her relationship with her mom, which is such a fraught topic
Yeah.
to begin with and laying that all out. Like I'm just thinking like besides this IVF thing, we don't know much about Bose. Like we don't know much about like what she struggles with. We don't really know much about like her early life or her family dynamics or like we kind of see stuff with her assistant and her daughter, but it's like very like surface level, right? Like look what a good mom I'm being and I'm just interested to see if there's going to be something that forces her hand or if she just naturally opens up and is being more guarded because I do think she came on this show with an agenda, right? Like she
Me
wants to
too.
sell herself as a personality. That's not a bad thing inherently, but that agenda hasn't cracked yet and it hasn't like wavered. And so I just, with her, I'm like struggling to find anything to grab onto, that like,
No, I'm with you. I think that's really well said because I think with Bose, it's kind of hard to articulate sometimes how I feel about like sort of her presence on the show because I do like I think my instinct is to like her and to
yeah,
find her refreshing.
she's
But
very
you're right.
funny in the
Yes,
confessionals.
very much so. Like she's good at being on TV, and I think that it's savvy of her to have gotten probably through 2 seasons of a Real Housewives franchise and like not
Beverly
had sort of
Hills. Yeah.
yeah. But I do think that that sort of agenda and that coming in not really wanting to go deep probably and get into the muck and be as complicated of a figure that can't hold up for that long on
No,
Housewives. And
it's
so
true.
whether that's the other women recognizing that and
Mhm.
digging like on Salt Lake City or like something else happening, I don't know, but uh that can't sustain itself for that
Yeah.
long as a new housewife. It just can't.
It, we've seen it happen so many times where, the person who kind of stands behind the person who's at the center
Yes.
of it, like Dorit, eventually Dorit's problems go away or she figures it all out. And what happens next is then people are looking to the person right beside her. And it's usually some variation of you weren't a good enough friend to me, or you screwed me over, or you like betrayed me in some way. So I hope it doesn't go that route because it feels so predictable, but it does feel like maybe that's where it ends, because I don't think her and Dorit's dynamic lasts forever. I just don't think
No,
it's
it
that
doesn't feel
strong.
deep enough. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
deep enough. No, it feels a little bit convenient and I like it, but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel deep. Um, well, Joan, I appreciate you staying a little over our
Oh my
allotted
God. Sorry I
time,
talk
but
so
no,
much.
no, no, no. We needed to get through these shows, and there's a lot there. So you cover Bravo a lot for
Mhm.
Paper Magazine. What have you been writing about recently? I know you did the Angie K hair
I did.
spread,
Yeah.
which was
So
instantly
yes.
canon.
I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I have some fun stuff in the works like that. I mean, I have a column that runs on paper every Friday called So Chic, Very Chic, which is a play on Dorit's, wind chime
Love.
monologue. I didn't use that exact one for copyright reasons, but yeah, it's a exploration of Bravo fashion. That's like one. I think I've been doing that for like 3 years now, which is
Wow.
fun because it allows me to like use the fashion as a way to express my opinions on these shows, but really looking at the way these people put themselves together, the stories clothes tell, whether it's like they don't have any money or they're putting too much money into it or like they're kind of being a person. I'm a huge fan of Angie K, despite the kind of rough season that she had this last time. I did the, big photo shoot with her and the hair. I was inspired by the books in my grandmother's salon growing up,
Love.
all the hair books and ads. So we had a lot of fun with that. And I gotta say, like, it was an affirming experience just to see someone who was exactly how they appear on television in my work with them. You meet so many housewives and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
like this character you're playing isn't real. But like I've had a lot of experiences like with Angie or I mean, everyone who meets Luann will say the same thing. Like, it's
Yes.
exactly what you get on TV is how they are in real life, and so it was fun. I do a lot of that kind of stuff, and yeah, I'm very very happy to keep writing about
Awesome.
Bravo.
Awesome. Well, go check out Joan's writing, follow
Yeah,
her on Twitter. Great commentary there as well. That's where I first found your work.
yeah.
And anything else you want to plug before we sign off here?
Yeah, I also host a podcast that comes out once a week that we kind of use Bravo to talk about politics. It's like my way to engage with politics through a
Okay.
lens I think doesn't get discussed often, like through pop culture and Bravo. So it's called Eating for Free if you want to go listen to that. I come out every week. Other than that, yeah, go Summer House. I hope it keeps going strong.
Me too. Me too. Joan, thank you so much. I'm so glad we were able to do
Yeah,
this, and we'll definitely do it again soon. This was amazing.
please. This was a
Yeah.
blast.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Bye. I want to gab.